finest symbol of excellence in sports entertainment.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to My World. And of course, we couldn't do it without the Hall of Famer, your friend and mine, Double J, Jeff Jarrett. Jeff, how are you, man?
Oh, you could probably do it without the Hall of Famer. With your attitude early this morning, you came out all froggy, ready to jump, whether Silva or Cassio in your corner. You're ready to joust today is what I hear. You're ready to joust. We've got a nice topic, going to go back to the United Center, but you're coming out swinging. That's just what I've heard. Little birdie told me.
I wouldn't say all that. I would say that we're going to have a lot of fun this week, though, because we're not just recording a podcast here. We're also going to be talking about ad-free shows Top Guy Weekend in Chicago, which is always a good time. We had our first Top Guy Weekend last year at the Hyatt Regency in Schaumburg, doing it again this year. But this year, there's a special wrinkle. We're getting together for a good cause. Yes, we got plenty of stuff that you can't buy a ticket to. You've got to be a member and a top guy over at Ad-Free Shows. But we're getting together for Mongo. We're doing a very special fundraising event, all for Steve McMichael, the former real Four Horsemen member. And in addition to that, one hell of a football player. We're talking about Steve Mongo McMichael, and we're doing a little fundraising effort at moneyformongo.com. 100% of your donation goes directly to Mongo. Doesn't go to Jeff, doesn't go to me, it doesn't go to Fight. It goes 100% straight to Mongo. And we want you to make a donation over at moneyformongo.com. Now, what are we doing? Well, we're doing a podcast super show. And I mean the biggest one we've ever done. It's not just Jeff and I. It's Eric Bischoff. It's Tony Schiavone. It's Jim Ross. It's Ric Flair. And it's Mick Foley, all on the same stage, telling stories and trying to entertain you, all for a great cause. Moneyformongo.com. Now, if you can't make it to Chicago, no big deal. Watch it on Fight at moneyformongo.com is where you can make a donation. But everybody's got Fight, right? FITE is where you find Fight. It's an easy download for any of your apps or your smart devices, or just watch it on your browser. FITE is Fight. But Money for Mongo, man, this Saturday, 12:30 Central, local Chicago time. I don't know what to expect with you and Ric Flair and Mick Foley and Jim Ross and Tony Schiavone. That's like a who's who, man. Think about that. You got the whole main event of Ric Flair's last match really there, the big issue with you two guys. And of course, Eric's had some fun run-ins over the years with Rick, and who could forget all the craziness that's happened between you and Jim Ross or Mick Foley and Tony Schiavone. This should be a lot of fun, man. What do you expect?
I cannot wait. When everything started to come together and you were telling me about another ride we're jumping on, but Money for Mongo, absolutely great cause. I'm sure we're going to be discussing Four Horsemen. Me and JR maybe can revisit some old stories. Me and the Nature Boy, we may lock it up one more time. You never know. No, it's going to be fun. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to seeing my old pal Tony Schiavone on stage as well. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Great calls, as you stated. And man, what a ride it's been as of late, Conrad. I mean, Dallas and going out west this weekend, the day after Money for Mongo, and nostalgia works not only in professional wrestling, but baseball this past weekend. Lots of moving parts, as we say, and your nonsense last week at the steakhouse. I'm not real sure what we should cover off the top here. I really don't, but I'm glad you started with Money for Mongo.
Money for Mongo, man. It happens this Saturday. We really want you guys to come out and see us, make a donation. I want to be clear. It's free, y'all. We're not charging you for this podcast super show. We want you to make a donation to Mongo. By the way, of course, it is tax deductible. It is a charitable cause. I mean, we want you to help somebody who needs some help. And right now, Mongo, in real life, y'all, is in the fight of his life with ALS. And if you've seen any recent pictures of Mongo, you know, man, that disease is kicking his butt right now. And every little bit helps. I've been fortunate enough to be speaking with his lovely wife, Misty, earlier today. And man, I got some more information about, you know, what's covered and what's not covered and what they need help with. And they need all the help we can get their way. So please consider moneyformongo.com. And don't forget to check us out on Fight this Saturday at 12:30 Central, 1:30 Eastern. And right after that, the Chernoff boys, who you and I think a lot of, are putting together a little program called the Wrestling Showcase. All the information is available for that as well. If you go to Fight, FITE. Tickets are on sale now, though. If you just throw it in your browser, you'll find the Eventbrite site, Wrestling Showcase. That's all happening this Saturday. Of course, on Sunday night, everybody in the wrestling world is going to be focused on All Out, but you are going to be catching a super early or very late night flight on Saturday because you're going to be on stage again doing a little yakky, talky. I think it's called PAX West. Is that right? It's a big deal.
I did PAX East, which was in Boston. It's they're the two biggest. There's TwitchCon and there's other different gaming conventions and gatherings, if you will, but PAX is right up there at the tip top, and very fortunate. We did Podcast Movement last week, so I was at a podcast convention with you, and you took up all of our time in the panel. But this panel, I'm going to be out with James Deegan, my partner in Moonsault Digital. He is the founder of MegaCat, which created WrestleQuest. I say all that to say the panel is about professional wrestling and gaming and the history of wrestling and gaming. So James is the expert in gaming. I got a little knowledge on the wrestling side. So yeah, going to be doing a panel out west. Really, really looking forward to that, Conrad. Like I said, maybe I'll be able to get a few words in and there won't be another Conrad Thompson on stage. Me and Eric sidebarred. Did you come up for air for that entire 75-minute panel?
You did not sidebar with Eric Bischoff.
Yes, I did. I sidebarred with him before, during, and after because you kept talking. At the steakhouse, we predicted it. We said, hey, I guarantee you tomorrow. This is when you were flipping around with TV stations and going from CBS to TBS.
All right, hang on.
Eric, hold on. I said, Eric, do you think that we'll get to talk at all? He goes, no. He said, that's why I'm not even prepping for it. We won't say a word. Conrad will talk for all 75 minutes. And you did.
First of all, it's 45 minutes, but he didn't say that. But I'm glad that somebody was there to keep the train on the tracks because you'd still be fucking rambling on knowing you. But no, really, we did have maybe one of the best turnouts we've ever had at Podcast Movement. Greatly appreciate all the support. It turned into a meet and greet after. It's just an honor to be asked to go speak at Podcast Movement. I think this was the 4th or 5th time I've been fortunate enough to do it. But man, you guys are my right-hand guys when it comes to that, because it's easy for us to talk about what we're doing with our shows and ad-free shows and all that. And then afterwards that evening, we got to do something pretty fun. Or I guess it was the night before, actually.
The night before, I thought we were going to a nice steak dinner, which you bat 1,000 on picking restaurants, but I thought the meal was actually going to be for us to discuss the panel. Nope. As you say, check that off. That didn't happen.
No, listen, I knew. Here's the reality. Like, at this point, we've done enough of those just discussions and presentations.
Rationalization why we didn't talk. This is a rationalization.
No, seriously, because I know, Eric and I were there meeting with agencies all day. You were playing grab ass in Hendersonville or whatever. So you eased in just to make sure you get your fancy photo for social. I see how it is. And then we both make sure we alligator arm and let Dave Green pick up a tab for once.
Yes, sir.
Great. I loved all that. But Eric and I, he was like, hey, do we have a format? And I said, do you think we need one? He goes, no, I just know we can get up there and just talk. It's second nature. We don't need to prep for what we do. And so I kind of thought that would be it, but I know you are very much, hey, I want to prep. I want to plan. I want to get ready. That's not a negative, by the way. It's a great thing. But I knew that's not really going to be necessary. I didn't know the steakhouse would be as noisy as it was, but I was really glad that they positioned us in a table near the bar, not just because Eric Bischoff could run her ragged getting some more Coors Lights, but I knew I could probably sweet talk our way into getting that TV change. So instead of watching some golf rerun, I asked for TBS, but it's so loud they thought I said CBS.
This is my world listeners. This is one of the funniest nights of all. If you could have seen Conrad Thompson when he went to the trouble and do you want appetizers and can I get you more water and have you looked at the menu? Hey, can I tell you about the specials? And literally you have to talk this loud to make the order.
Yes.
And Conrad whispers. He didn't whisper. He's actually talking. Hey, will you change that channel to TBS? And the lady said, oh, certainly. And all of a sudden you see on the big screen, what was that show on?
It was Big Brother. They were showing Big Brother on CBS, not AEW on TBS. And what's funny is, as soon as I said it, you and Eric are both like, is this real? But here's the reality. Earlier in the day, we had all been talking about, what are they going to do tomorrow? Like, what's this going to look like tomorrow? And then more importantly, what rating do they want? I mean, we're wrestling nerds, so we're having that conversation just independently. And even our friend, who I guess we could spill the beans because she posted it, Dorian goes, I can't believe we're in this nice of a steakhouse watching wrestling. And I'm like, well, I just had to ask. And ta-da, there it is. Because here's the thing, none of us were able to actually watch it full time. We all had to sort of twist our head and just glance up and see what was going on. Well, so our pal Dave Green's there, and we know the main event is starting at the top of the second hour. And literally immediately he goes, well, it's over. And we're all like, wait a minute, what? So then it becomes, where are they going with this? What is this going to do? That was fun. And then the next day, we started to discuss first thing in the morning as we're going to our different agency meetings. What's the rating going to be? And Eric said his number. And when he did, you immediately had pause like, oh, I didn't think Eric was going to say that. I need to think about my number. And I called it, and you're going to give me my props. I said 1,050 or 1,050,050. And it was 1,049,000. If I was on Price is Right, I'd have fucking nailed it. Come on.
Conrad, it truly pains me to give you your flowers. Truly, but when that number came out, I'm just like, son of a gun. But he did. Oh, Connie nailed it, pal. Take you to Vegas. Take you to Vegas.
I mean, it was close. I was grinning like a possum the rest of the day because here I got these two TV executives who've done all this stuff on TV, and my dumb hillbilly ass nails it.
It was fun. It was fun watching Dorian watch us discuss it and all that great food coming. And I didn't want to come up for air, but we kept the conversation rolling though. That was a fun night. That was a fun night. And it was a fun podcast panel. That was a lot of fun.
And then the next day, another fantastic lunch where again, it's man versus food. And let me explain what man versus food with Jeff means. When you travel with Jeff, my favorite part is you get to watch him eat. So my man orders a shrimp cocktail, not for the table, his own. And then he has a soup, and then he has a salad, not a soup or a salad, both. And then he has a prime rib. And then he has two sides. And then he's like, I'm not eating dessert. Oh, that sorbet looks pretty good. Give me one of those. Oh, and of course, unsweet tea. But you did give me a pack of candy that I have yet to reveal to Megan.
Oh, Lord.
Gifted us.
Yeah.
It's the most maybe unbelievable bag of candy you've ever seen in your life.
It's a conversation piece. It's a conversation starter. And you know, in a lot of ways, the integration could be put into this show. At some point, you will integrate it into today's show. There's your Easter egg, folks.
Okay. The name of the candy, the label on the candy packet, which you would probably most often see at a bachelorette party, I will reference at some point in the show. I won't tell you that was the name of it, but you'll know it when you hear it.
Easter egg.
Easter egg coming your way. And our Easter egg today is going to be buried in a show called SummerSlam 1994. And there's a lot to unpack here. I just want to give everybody another peek behind the curtain. Jeff Jarrett is the biggest basketball junkie there ever was. And everybody knows Chicago, and specifically the United Center, that's the house that Jordan built. But he left before he really got to do much there because he retires, because this SummerSlam 94 is one of the first events that happens there. He's fiddling around in Birmingham, Alabama, trying to play baseball. But somehow Jeff Jarrett finds himself on that pay-per-view, as he always does. And he's working with a fellow known as Mabel. Now, in real life, this is Nelson Frazier. He's got his man Mo with him. And they're the Harlem Knights is what they're called in March of 93, when you first, I think, become acquainted with them. What do you remember about first meeting Mabel and Mo and their time in Tennessee with you?
Big Nelson. That's the first time. As you know what, and for the My World listeners that may or may not know, Nelson is no longer with us. He passed away a few years ago. Here's Conrad. It's just kind of amazing when I go back and different things I remember. But I remember my father having a conversation on the phone in Hendersonville at the office, and hey, son, that's when he's real serious. We've got two guys starting a TV. They're driving over from the Carolinas. Okay, Dad. And I was at a spot show on Fridays, like usual, and he would be driving down. A lot of times he'd come in on Friday nights, but many times, if he wasn't, whatever, he'd get up in Nashville early on a Saturday morning and drive down to TV. So he's leaving the house at 6 o'clock, rolling there about 9:30 or 10. But he was giving me the heads up that two guys are starting. They may be there before I get there. Welcome them and all that. Conrad in Memphis studio, Memphis TV, 1960 Union Avenue. Basically the break room, when you have corporate areas, but TV studios, it had probably 4 little small tabletops and 2 vending machines and a sink and a coffee maker and all that. Just a real simple, and then a hallway, and had 2 green rooms, which were really like small bathrooms. That was really what the backstage of Memphis TV was. So you came in a side door, and I got there early, probably rode with Eddie or whatever. We get there early in tapes, and you have to kind of get the production going, and Bob, the floor director. So everything gets going, and I walk in the back, and there is Bobby Horn, which is Mo, and that we know as Mo. But Nelson, who later became Mabel, he was sitting down in the chair. You talk about a big man, and yeah. I'm 200 pounds, maybe at this point, maybe a little bit more. But I mean, he was enormous, but had just he looked like a 1986, to me, the first time I saw it, and this is where I'm going with it. The first time I saw him, it is a 1986 Hulk Hogan opponent. One man gang,
yes.
Big boss man. I mean, we could go Kamala, go through this, but he was ginormous, huge, man, nice as can be. But that's my first impression. Drove over from the Carolinas. God, I'd like to try to do the math at how old Nelson was in 1993, but he was a young man, and Bobby had brought him over. But man, just the nicest guys. And we had just come off a long run with the Moondogs, and
he was 22, Jeff.
He's 22 when I met him.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah.
He was born in 71. So in 93, he was 22.
Wow. Young guy. But anyway, wow, I didn't realize. Okay. 4 years younger than me. But it was cool. It was really cool to meet him, and that started our relationship. And obviously you can imagine Jarrett walking in, and one of the first things, damn, you're even bigger than your picture showed, because he was a big man, and we were excited to get him in the territory.
He debuts with the USWA, and very early on, he's teaming with Brian Christopher and Six Mans, and then their debut on TV. Well, Meltzer had this to say. The main event was set up with a 6-man squash on TV on March 13th, with the Knights and Christopher destroying 2 jobbers who had to be carted out. Actually, Christopher spent most of the match relaxing on Dave Brown's desk, and the Knights destroying the jobbers. When it was 3-on-1, Jeff Jarrett tried to become a partner with one of the jobbers, but soon they got rid of the jobber and were beating on Jarrett until Lawler and Davis made the save. They're billing the members of the Knights as 6'10", 525, so he was estimated to be 6'7" and 425 to 450. These two are really green as a team. The big one also nearly broke his ankle when he stood on the middle rope, ready to come off, and at his weight, the rope broke. With the middle rope useless, they still tried to whip their foes into the ropes for clotheslines, which can be pretty dangerous with the middle rope gone. So it says a lot about the mass of this human being just standing on the rope, and woof, those Memphis ropes hadn't been put to that test in a long time. Buddy
Wayne, I don't remember specifically, but I can only imagine him raising all kinds of hell. But this is such an accurate, I forgot that was day one at TV, but when Nelson came to Memphis and came to Tennessee, he was so green, and he didn't even really, he didn't understand. I don't say this, make sure he wasn't even completely aware of a ring presence and how he had to be careful. He wasn't reckless. I just don't think he understood, hey, if I sit on this second rope, it ain't holding me. It certainly, you can't stand in the middle. Maybe you can get over in a turnbuckle, but Big Nelson, that was day one. Man, the presence and the what is it, 150 people in the studio. they immediately, and Brian Christopher can get heat over there on the microphone. It was their first few Memphis TVs. They got over to the crowd because Nelson was so big and Brian could talk, and you could just kind of see things develop how they were going to.
So we get to the 6-man against you, Lawler, and Danny Davis in Nashville. The heels get the win, but within a couple of days, you're teaming with the Big Boss Man to get a win in Memphis. That house, not the individual payday, the house was 5,500. So the business is down for sure.
Dead.
But what do you remember about working with Nelson in these very early matches? I mean, Meltzer acknowledges that he's green, and I get that, but it feels almost David and Goliath with anybody when you're that size. So that's probably pretty easy for you, or am I reading that wrong?
No, he wanted to learn. I think, what was he like?
Yes.
Man, he wanted to learn so bad, a great attitude, soak things up like a sponge. And, a guy his size, he can hurt you by accident quickly. Just real quick. He's so heavy, but he was agile and he was all business. He wanted to learn. He wanted to try things, but at times, I can remember the first couple of times he splashed me in the corner, or just really like a running freight train in the corner. You talk about impact. He just didn't really understand. He wasn't doing it on purpose, but he didn't have, so you can say he's stiff, but it wasn't on purpose. He just didn't have it down. He didn't have the dance down. He's rough around the edges. Not, like I said, not on purpose, but he would put his weight into you and you felt it. Had no choice.
In Louisville, the baby faces get a 6-man win over the Knights and Christopher, and you get transitioned over into feuding with Shawn Michaels, who's going to be coming in while Lawler is going to marry up with the Knights, as he'll be the one winding up teaming with Boss Man for a match. The big monster heel losing to the King. I know you said that's a 1986 thing for the WWF and Hulk Hogan. It was kind of a Lawler thing too, right? You guys were always looking for monsters.
That's a Lawler 82. Yeah. I saw some spot show matches with Lawler and Mabel that you just Lawler had such a knack of putting a guy over at the beginning of the match and putting him over a little bit more. And then just when you think Lawler's going to have a little flurry of offense, then they actually start into the heat. And Lawler's such a good seller and build it. And he's talking to Nelson and walk and talk and get heat and do this and do that, literally guide him through. And when the match is all said and done, Lawler pulls the strap down, a couple of hard rights, and then they go into a finish. So Nelson probably takes one big bump, and that's the finish. But nowadays, and I'm not trying to go this route, but the work rate would be, he only took one bump, and there'd be all kind of criticism that Nelson couldn't do this or that Nelson couldn't do that. But in the arena and a spot show that night or whatever it may be, everybody in the building was on their feet cheering for Lawler. And when he won, the place exploded. So simple psychology, but Nelson learned an awful lot from Lawler on how to work like a big man, is specifically during heat.
If you want to learn how to work like a big man, you need to get some Blue Chew. Talking about that ding dong, daddy. As you heard Jeff say, Nelson was so stiff he didn't even know it. Well, that's the way your penis is going to be. Come on, boys and girls. You know the deal with Blue Chew. You've heard us talk about it forever. Why haven't you tried it already? Listen, Blue Chew is a unique online service that delivers the same active ingredients as Viagra and Cialis, but in chewable form and at a fraction of the cost. Take these dudes anytime, day or night. You can plan ahead or be ready whenever an opportunity arises. And the process is simple. You sign up at bluechew.com, you consult with one of their licensed medical providers, and once you're approved, you'll receive your prescription within days. And here's the best part. It's all done online. That means skip the visit to the doctor's office. No more awkward conversations and no waiting in line at the pharmacy. Blue Chew's tablets are made in the USA. They're prepared and shipped directly to your door, all in a discreet package. But there won't be anything discreet about your package. Hurry up. Go to bluechew.com right now. We've got a special deal for our listeners. You can try Blue Chew free when you use our promo code MyWorld. Just pay the $5 shipping and use that promo code MyWorld at checkout. That's it. That's bluechew.com. The promo code is MyWorld to receive your first month free. Just visit bluechew.com for more details and important safety information. We thank Blue Chew for sponsoring the podcast and Jeff Jarrett's Wiener Meat. So now let's talk about what we're doing next. We got in Memphis, Boss Man's not going to show up. So you wind up doing back-to-back matches, teaming with Lawler in a loss by DQ. And then you're going to work in the main event and lose to Shawn Michaels for the IC title. These sort of things where guys just no show don't happen all that often on TV these days. But in the territory days, especially when, I mean, let's be clear, Boss Man's not here as his first choice. It's a favor. When he no shows, is that just par for course? And you got to be, well, let's just get something else together right quick, pal. What's the thinking there?
So it's not like what's the Eric better than, less than, or different than?
Yeah.
So you have to plug somebody in. I don't remember the specific instance, but this is one of those things. Boss Man, obviously full-time job with WWE. For whatever reason, we knew going in he wasn't going to make it. So who you going to put as Lawler's partner is kind of by deduction. And whether Boss Man had an appearance or overseas or another booking or an off day that he was promised, it was like, okay, he can't be there. And when, we might have found out, look, Memphis on a Monday, the following Tuesday is when this card is going to take place because of the bicycle tape. So we cut those promos 9 days out. So, we've got 9 days. I'm not saying whenever we found out, but once the promotion's out, then you go, okay, he's not going to be there. So for whatever reason, Boss Man wasn't there. Shawn was. That was an advertised main event. So my gut tells me, the old man says, you're working twice a night. Yes, sir. Okay, I am.
Well, here we go. Let's talk about in Louisville. You're teaming with the Boss Man, who this time shows up. There's 1,100 fans. You got Shawn Michaels and Jerry Lawler on top. And, you're starting to see through all these cards, Nelson get more reps. And I know that a lot of us grew up with Mabel, but oftentimes we would see him work like a giant. And that's the thing we get to hear. But we also hear sometimes these guys are so young and so athletic. Like, say, for instance, the Big Show. We hear that the dude could do a nip up or kip up or whatever you want to call it, that he could do a shooting star press that he did at the power plant, that he could do missile drop kicks. I think we saw one of those in WCW. And just because you can in wrestling and sometimes in life doesn't necessarily mean you should. Did you see any real life athleticism that made you think, man, he can do a lot more than, say, King Kong Bundy had really been required to do? Or what could you speak to about his physicality at just 22 years old?
He was much quicker than than he ever showed, because he was kind of taught move like a big man, methodical, if you will. He didn't have the athletic ability, to jump over on Paul. Paul, former basketball player, and I say that as I'm a basketball junkie, but that's, to me, the athleticism of that. Nelson just had, I don't want to say he was cut out to be a wrestler, but he was. He had facials, and when he became Mabel in the rap, I knew from the beginning his personality as far as the animated face. I just think there were shades of Nelson Frazier as a talent in Memphis that was super flamboyant. Flamboyant is probably not the right word, but he had great energy. He had a lot of energy in his facials, and I want to say a kick-ass monster, but just a lot more energy that came out of him that he never saw once he became Mabel. Mabel was. And then as he, progressed through his career, but early Nelson, coached by Lawler when they were working, and then I would try to mimic what Lawler also do, is like, hey man, get on me, but get vicious and let the people see your face and get aggressive. I probably said that word to him more than any word. I said, Nelson, you got to get aggressive. That doesn't mean hurt me, but you got to get aggressive and reckless. But there were shades of that in Memphis that I wish he could have continued to grow in that type character.
Well, we know that First Family is going to be reformed. This was originally, of course, Jimmy Hart's gimmick. We got Mike Sanders as the manager, and the Knights are going to be there with Scotty Flamingo, who we know will eventually be Raven, and Brian Christopher. They're going to take on Lawler's Army, which is you, of course, Jerry Lawler, the Moondogs, and Richard Lee. This is Nostalgia 101 here. You know, a team of Jimmy Hart's crew, the First Family, against the team of Jerry Lawler's crew. That's just nostalgia for that Memphis area, is it not?
It is, and you can tell that, like I said earlier, we came off a run with the Moondogs maybe 2-3 years, and we brought them back as babyface. I don't think this is the first time they were babyfaces, but you know, territory's down, no money. At this point, Lawler's going back and forth to the WWF at the time. 92, 93, I had started making some shots, not a lot, but for, you know, just the territory was so down. But the, you know, the Lawler's Army versus Hart's Army, yes, it's Nostalgia 101, but with a new twist, a couple of new twists in there.
It is cool that, you know, all of a sudden the Moondogs and the Knights are out of Memphis after just, you know, 1 week and one match. Did you expect Mabel and Mo to wind up in the WWF as quickly as they did?
I said earlier, when I first saw Nelson, to me, he had monster heel for Hogan or a babyface, whoever it may be. But he just had that presence about him and the athletic ability. Once you see him work a couple of times, you know, you just say, all right, there's a run in him. Get the right creation, get the right gimmick. You know, at that time, that's when there were so many characters that were prevalent that it had that late 80s run. And it's like, I put a good character on him, whether it's WCW or WWF, and he's got a run in him. His size alone and his willingness to learn, he's just going to get better. And my dad also, he really, really liked him in the early days. I mean, really, I know he sung his praises to Vince many, many times.
Well, not long after they do a dark match for WWF TV, they're brought back to Memphis. Is it just more an issue of these guys got to have more reps? They're not ready for the prime time yet. I mean, that's probably to be expected, right?
Our good old pal Bruce. I'd love to hear Bruce's recollection, just because my best recollection of all of it was, let's bring them up, let's look at them. If they like their in-ring work, all right, then let's start them in the sheen and figure out character development. And I believe that's what happened, because that's where Oscar came along, that Oscar had rapped for some folks. And I think he personally rapped for Vince McMahon
in an elevator. Yep.
Okay. Yeah. So that's how things work. Creative works. Okay. This guy can rap, and hey, Mr. McMahon, let me lay it on you. Hey, I just saw those guys at 2 TVs back that may fit them, that may fit the bill. And they just, you know, made the connection. That to me is what I remember happening.
I want to mention that, you know, we do actually see the debut. It's taped for TV in June of 1993, and it airs in July of 1993. It's Mabel and Mo with Oscar. They're going to be the rapping tag team Men on a Mission, MOM. What did you think of the gimmick? I mean, I guess I want to back this up. When the first time I can see him, being Mabel, we're talking about, doing stuff with you guys in Memphis, that would have been, does this sound right? Like March of 93
with us? Yeah, about that.
And now fast forward just 3 months later.
Yeah, it was quick.
June, he's doing dark matches and even would have a television match taped that airs in July. So it's very, very quick. And again, we're talking about a 22-year-old man, and in wrestling, and I mean, just gosh, everything, sometimes just in life. There's a phrase, is it too much too soon sort of deal? I mean, for him to really debut with you at the end of March, and then May 4th, he has this dark match. I mean, that's like, you're just getting going and you're already on TV, and he's a 22-year-old, and it's probably not easy to travel, and there's a lot going on. Was this too much too soon for him, do you think?
I definitely think so. But if you take a step back, and Conrad, you've done many more podcasts, gosh, hundreds, if not thousands, but I'm sure in talking to Bruce or JR, and y'all have covered 91, 92, 93, the state of the industry.
Yes.
It was down. I mean, it was down. And this is certainly the end of the Hogan era. And, the steroid trial, and WCW wasn't setting the world on fire. And I know ad sales, and, we'd come off the Dallas, the story. But at the very core of all of this is that no independent wrestling, two major companies, and the folks that had, when you look at us being the last territory, and Austin had come through, and Taker had come through, and Godfather and Steiner and the folks we've covered on here, but kind of that pipeline of talent that had gone through, that it had some seasoning. Now we were at the point of 93. Hey, man, they're working Memphis. They look good. Let's try them. I mean, it wasn't even pump the brakes and say, hey, let's give them 6 more months in Memphis. I mean, Nelson literally was working independence at the beginning of 93. I mean, I hate to even call it independence. In those days, I was always taught it was called outlaw wrestling.
Yes.
There weren't any territories except ours, maybe remnants of a few here and there. Dallas was pretty, there was just nothing there. So outlaw wrestling. So the reality is Nelson went from waking up on Christmas morning, 92, and maybe hitting an outlaw show, in 6 months, he's on WWF programming. So the answer to your question is absolutely too much too soon.
So not only that, he's also a very large individual who's trying to, nobody thinks about this, but to rent a car, and that's part of the gig here, you've got to have a credit card, and you've got to be 25 years old.
Think about that.
He probably has neither. He's a big television star and a hulking man, but he's 22 years old. So he probably doesn't have a credit card. And even if he does, he's not 25. So you might be big enough to main event a pay-per-view, but not big enough to rent a car here at our car rental desk at Avis.
Welcome, Bobby Horn, my man, Bobby. But that was the duo, that Bobby was older, more seasoned, more business-minded. That was always the yin and the yang of them two, and complemented each other very, very well. But his partner, Bobby Horn, Mo, he's the one that, that was a part of the tag team, and both of them understood that.
Talk to me a little bit about the rapping gimmick. The WWF had not really ever tried it, but WCW had, and depending on who you listen to, was PN News a success or a failure? I think as far as an in-ring performer goes, most people would say he's probably not going to win a lot of top 10 list nominations, but there was a time where PN News was getting big crowd reactions because hip hop had started to become more and more popular. It was no longer just gangster rap. Now you had acts like Criss Cross, and it was rap aimed at kids. And that's an emerging market, if you will, at the time. And Vince, trying to keep up with the times, says, hey, if this is catching on and there's Yo MTV raps and all that, well, let's do that. And what they came up with was Men on a Mission. Now, the trouble is, all the hip hop gimmicks in wrestling at that point, including this one, in my opinion, was pretty lame. But that's with the context of looking back in 2022. You were a young man at the time. What did you think of the presentation? Was it a quote unquote good gimmick, or was this just bad right away?
I loved Oscar. I thought he was charismatic, but I knew, and I called him, I knew Nelson and Bobby different, and I would not have ever thought, and look, I'll take VKM's batting average any day of the week.
Oh, yeah.
Any day of the week. But I knew those guys, and I just really felt, oh man, they're missing the boat on Nelson. They're really missing the boat on Mabel, because he just wasn't a hip hop guy. He wasn't a dancing guy. He wasn't a gregarious, fun loving talent, if you will, that would kind of fit into this. Now I get it. Vince and Bruce and Pat and the team, that's okay. They'll grow into it. But Nelson wasn't seasoned enough as a performer, as far as tackle, drop down, get it again, just his in-ring presence. So him being unsure of himself as an in-ring performer, and then on top of that, having to act. That's what it is, having to be a someone that he wasn't, having just that shred of his personality. It might have been there if you dug down deep. I don't think. I never really saw it, but it certainly never came out. I wasn't a fan of those two doing the rap gimmick. I thought Oscar had charisma. I thought it was a unique, at the time, he could resonate. And when, Oscar would get going in live events, house shows, he'd get them up and going. But their tag team didn't follow up the rap, if you will. So I wasn't a big fan of the rap with those two guys.
Now let's just take a time out from talking about Mabel and Mo and all that for just a minute.
Oh boy.
How, I'm just trying to process this because we've talked about it before. Here you are, you've been wrestling in Tennessee, you've been wrestling in Texas, you've been on TV, you've been on ESPN, the ups and the downs, the good and the bad, grown up in the business, all around it. And this joker is in wrestling for a cup of coffee and he's on WWF TV before you are. And I don't know at this point if you knew it or not, but you've told us before that once upon a time you learned that maybe you did have an opportunity to go sooner and your dad held you back and said you weren't ready. And in hindsight, that was probably a blessing. But at the time, that's probably hard to wrap your head around when it's like, damn, Dad, I'm doing all this for the family business and I'm not making any money and I'm not moving along as fast as I want to. And I know you now at Double Nickels, not a ton of patience. Can't imagine you had a lot more when you were 22. It feels as if this could have been very frustrating to see someone seemingly pass you and get fast tracked. And it's not based on how much time they've invested in their craft or how much time they've invested in the weight room or how much time they've spent under the learning tree or working matches or making towns or any cliche you want to make. And boom, he's on TV just because he's a big old boy. Part of that has to rub you the wrong way, even if at the time you don't have the same vision you have now, right?
So this is 2003, right?
This is 1993.
I bet. Yeah, my bad. 1993. Conrad, and I'm not putting me on his level, but do you know when I had my very first match with Shawn Michaels?
It was around this era, right?
Oh,
Okay.
80, 88.
Oh, okay. Back in Texas.
No, they came through a short stint and then went to WWF, got fired,
and then made the loop again. I got you.
The loop again. And I'm pointing this out. I think Shawn, obviously Scott Steiner. Now, Steiner in 93 was a big Japan superstar. I'm going to go Steve Austin, Undertaker, Godfather. I mean, I could go through a whole list of guys from 88, 89, 90, 91, 92. During this era, remember Steve Dahl and Rex King, well done. This is about the same era that they went up and got jobs. I mean, we could go through a laundry list. At this stage, Conrad, you talk about running out of patience for sure. But this is, October of this year is when Double J debuted. So 91, 92, that's when, when the Von Erichs did their, maybe one of the dumbest business moves in my career for sure. When all that went away, which made all the syndication money evaporate overnight, and my bank account started going back the other way, that's when I'm like, what am I doing here? I mean, it was not working for my, family territory, but it's like, Dad, Jerry, this is going against every fundamental that you've taught me and my grandmother taught me. This ain't working out. It ain't drawing. And I'm not saying you should pay me what I'm not drawing, but new horizons are needed. And so that was a part of the conversation. But yes, there's a few more talent in 93 that got jobs that had come through our territory like quickly. And it was just, Excellent point, Connie. But that is for sure. You hit the nail on the head with where my mindset was.
So now you eventually, get to join the company late 93. Let's fast forward a little bit. It's March of 94, and it's reported that Mabel fell on Pierre, aka PCO. He accidentally does this, of course. No one would intentionally hurt anybody. We're not accusing anyone of that. But he doesn't kick out, and they win the tag team titles on a show in London at Royal Albert Hall. And this was not supposed to be the plan. But when an injury happens, well, it happens. Do you remember you were on the show? You beat Coco Beware in a match right before. You remember hearing about this incident?
Royal Albert Hall, correct?
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of a bucket list. That's it's a small arena. It's a hall, as this title calls it. But and look, Coco, one of my dad's all-time favorite. I got to wrestle him in Royal Albert Hall. Me and Owen were traveling together. It was a fascinating card. But as far as look, Mabel had come into the territory, green. This is at the very beginning. I don't say the beginning, but really early in the new generation, which was the new branding, the predecessor to the Attitude Era. So a lot of new talent were coming in, a lot of moving parts. Jacques Rougeau had been around the block. He had worked in my father's territory back in the early 80s, but Pierre at this time was a new guy. So there was, I don't want to call it, I think unrest. I don't think there was a lot of heat on Mo and Mabel, but they were just green. Not that they were hurting folks, but just really, really green. And look, there was a whole group of talent jockeying for position. Now, Scott Hall was seasoned. Sean was seasoned. Bret Hart, obviously seasoned. Bam Bam had come off his, Japan run and WWF run, and he was back. And just there was a group of seasoned vets, but there was Duke the Dumpster, Adam Bomb. I mean, you name it. There was a bunch of talent. I was one of those that had come in and where everybody was kind of jockeying for position. Mo and Mabel specifically were two that were at times singled out, as in, hate to say this, but quote unquote, they weren't ready. And there was some validity to that.
So eventually Mo gets injured in April and Mabel turns into a singles competitor. And in August, of course, we're building towards SummerSlam. And it's announced that you two would be facing off against each other from the United Center in Chicago. I mean, you got to be somewhat excited. I mean, this is a big pay-per-view, your first SummerSlam. And, in my mind, it's always been WrestleMania #1, then SummerSlam, then Royal Rumble. Would you agree with that as far as the biggest three of the WWF pay-per-views?
Mania, Rumble, SummerSlam, Survivor Series. Yes.
So it's a big deal, A, to be there, B, to be in such a big building in a wrestling town like Chicago, C, for it to be the United Center and really one of the first events that's happening there. But it's not going to be a wrestling clinic. Were you disappointed to know that it was going to be a different style match? You're not going to get to show off what you can do against a Bret Hart or a Shawn Michaels on this platform. You're on the show, which is obviously great, and your character is clicking. And hey, it's TV time, but it's not going to be probably the type of match you would want to have. Am I wrong in guessing that?
So shout out to Derek, researcher. He did a wonderful job as usual, except that one time. No kidding. He really, looking back on all this and really thinking through everything. So I started in October of 93 with the vignettes. We run those. I get out on the road and Vince is saying, we're going to build you on TV, on live events, house shows. We're going to get you seasoned, but get you out and get exposed. We're going to do that for the next year. I think we have covered this on here, Conrad. I'm thinking, for the next year, what the heck are you talking about? But anyway, that was kind of the order of going forward. So, May, June, whatever it was, April, May, June, coming off Mania of 93 and all that. I mean, of 94 and the 10-man tag. All right, so where are we going with this? Well, when I found out that I was wrestling Mabel at the United Center, Undertaker versus Undertaker, we'll get into the card in a little bit. It's a stacked card, Brett and Owen, Sean and Kevin and all that. And I'm facing Mabel, and it was kind of discreetly, I was in the know that you're going to get a win here. Conrad, I kind of was like, okay, the boss has got his plan that Double J is beating a 500-pound giant. That's a pretty tall order, a good win. And it was a reassurance, if you will, that Double J's doing all right. That was pretty exciting to me. And, look, the cool stuff as far as United Center and SummerSlam and everything that we'll get into. But just the fact that I was on the card in a slot with a win, that was great news for my career.
No doubt about it. And it's great news for everyone listening that Car Shield has you covered. They're going to protect your wallet. They're protecting mine right now from expensive car repairs, and they're sponsoring this program as well. Car Shield is the #1 auto protection company in the U.S. They offer protection plans for around $100 a month, and the plans cover more parts than ever before, whether your car has 5,000 miles or 150,000 miles. And let me tell you how simple it is to get your car fixed. When you need a repair, you choose the mechanic, and Car Shield's administrators handle the rest. That's it. You don't have to deal with the paperwork or headaches. You're taken care of. Same goes if your car breaks down or you're stuck on the side of the road. Plans through Car Shield also include coast-to-coast roadside assistance. Car Shield administrators are there for you with rental car options and trip reimbursement at no extra cost too. Get coverage today and you'll lock in your price now, and it will never go up. That means as long as you own your car, no matter how old it is, you're protected from the rising cost of parts and repairs for your vehicle. Car Shield protects my wallet from expensive car repairs, and they'll do the same for you. Go to carshield.com/podcast to start your plan and lock in your pricing forever. That's carshield.com/podcast. A deductible may apply. So Meltzer mentions here the recap from August 15th, 1994. Actually, this is from Wade Keller. He says, Mabel defeated Raymond Roy. Jeff Jarrett then defeated Scott Taylor. As Jeff was celebrating his victory, Mabel's music began and Oscar rapped to the ring, accompanied by Mabel. Jarrett challenged Mabel to enter the ring, but WWF officials kept him from entering. McMahon hyped the match as country versus rap, which Wade correctly points out in some circles means Jeff Jarrett is the babyface. So I get that we're trying to say, well, they both like different types of music. One's a rapper and one's a country music singer. But that almost asks the audience, not who do you like better, who's the good guy or the bad guy. It's, hey, do you like country music or rap music? And I would go so far as to say that this is the era of the country music explosion. Garth Brooks is touring all over the world and maybe the #1 artist in the world. I don't know. And that's probably going to resonate with a large portion of the audience. Let's just call it like it is. Older white folks are going to like country music more. So therefore, in a weird way, you become the babyface. That's an interesting way to position this match, is it not?
Not to the New Yorker mind. That was, that the mindset was still the Northeast was still very prevalent thinking on that. And I'm not saying right or wrong, but in WWF creative, that thought never entered their mind. Oh, we're going to split the audience at all. Me and Bruce have joked through the years, and a lot of times in the early 90s, there were folks within creative services that still referred to country music as that country and Western music, which went out in early 70s. It wasn't called country and Western except way, way, way back. Right. So their mindset was not dividing the audience. It was the brash Double J, yada, 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 versus the cool hip hop emerging artist known as Men on a Mission.
August 25th and 27th, we're on the road to Madison Square Garden. We've got matches here at MSG, Nassau, and the Meadowlands. So working that New York market in a big way. And we've got, this is real, Jeff Jarrett teaming up with Bam Bam Bigelow to take on Mabel and Doink each night. Now, when you're working with Doink here, is it fair to say this is always Matt Bourne in these matches?
No, Matt was no longer there. It was Ray.
Apollo.
Yeah.
So I'm curious if you had to describe what we're seeing right now. Like, I just want everybody to pretend you know nothing about wrestling. And you're going to describe what we're seeing here to a non-fan. We have a country music cowboy covered in neon and maybe some light up shit. And he's going to be teaming with a guy covered in flames, including his head. He's tattooed his head with flames. And they're going to take on the largest black man you've ever seen, who has a guy who wraps him to the ring. And this large African-American fellow's tag team partner is a clown. That is the WWF in the summer of 1994. And I'm curious, as someone who has grown up in the business, and now you look around and, hey, this is awesome, man. I'm in Madison Square Garden. I'm working the Meadowlands. I'm at the Nassau Coliseum. There's a lot of really cool stuff happening here. But you're like, what the fuck? Right?
I loved every minute of it, Conrad, because you hit on it right there at the end. To put it in context, when you get those days a stack of airline tickets,
yep,
you get your booking sheet, and you have, for lack of a better word, the A market and the B market, and you have the same hotel all 3 nights. You work in the Meadowlands in New Jersey. You work in MSG in Manhattan, and you're going to go over to Long Island and work Nassau Coliseum back to back nights. Conrad, I'm used to driving about 250 miles in between shots. And I'm so that's one thing. The other thing is it's a WWF payoff at the time. Obviously they'll go way up in the Attitude Era, but still good payoffs. But it is, I don't say the early days because that's not accurate, but I couldn't help but stand in the middle of the ring and say, well, I fought Moondogs for a lot less money and they were gimmicked up. And I've seen Big Nelson, Big Mabel over there. I've seen him down in Tennessee as the Harlem Knights. I've seen Bam Bam Bigelow come through with Larry Sharp, and he came through the territory early in the days. I knew my old buddy Matt Bourne when he was Maniac Matt Bourne, but he came up here and made a lot of money as Doink the Clown, but that didn't work out. Now we have Ray under there. I'll take the money. I'll take the less miles, and then I'll just take the showbiz component of it. It was, you kind of did a really good job of describing it. Just think about entrances alone.
It's unbelievable. I mean,
it's entertaining.
And we're not done.
Ray in real life are good friends.
Right.
They worked, we worked good together. The match, look, it wasn't a 5-star Matt Classic like Will Ospreay, but it was a hell of a tag match.
All right. You brought it up. I wasn't going to bring it up, but you brought it up.
I just,
just what?
Topical.
Well, how's it topical?
It wasn't a 5-star match. It's all I'm going to say is me and Mabel did not have a 5-star match.
Well, let's talk about it for a minute.
Oh, here we go. Folks who are listening on audio, if you could have seen the look on Conrad's face when I just train of thought said those words, 5-star, he went, whoop. Oh.
An account on Twitter called @WrestlingBanana.
This is a gotcha moment. Here we go.
Pointed out over the weekend, Will Ospreay has had more 5-star matches, 4, in 1 month than CM Punk, John Cena, and Kurt Angle have had combined in their careers, 3. So, of course, this got a lot of people talking because there has been criticism of Meltzer's star rating and the validity of it and why people pay so much attention to it. And, is it real? Is it not? Is it something we should, respect or appreciate or whatever? And Kevin Nash chimed in. He logged into social media. And by the way, he has a fantastic podcast. Highly recommend everybody go check it out.
Sure does.
It's called Click This with Sean Oliver. It comes out on Mondays. And through this discourse where he's scrolling through Twitter, he sees this tweet. Will Ospreay's had more 5-star matches in 1 month than CM Punk, John Cena, and Kurt Angle have had combined in their careers. And with 4 simple words, Kevin Nash tweets in response to this, how's his merchandise sales? And the internet lost their mind. And people went,
really? I mean,
yes. I mean,
some of it.
Kevin Nash's tweet has 1,435 retweets as we're discussing it one day later.
Wow.
11,500 likes, 410 quote tweets. It became heavily debated.
Wow.
Because it brought into focus a long-standing debate with what internet fans, aka the Smart Mark fans, aka guys like me who have subscribed to the Wrestling Observer newsletter literally for 25 years. I've been a subscriber for 25 years. And it brought about what's more important, having good matches or drawing good money. And if you go back and you ask a guy like Al Snow, who had a similar debate 10 years ago, what was the best match on WrestleMania 3? He would say Hogan Andre. Most of us would say Savage Steamboat. And Al would argue people came to see Hogan Andre. They didn't come to see Savage Steamboat. Yes, it maybe was a better match once the bell rang, but people wanted to see Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant. And Bruce Pritchard has argued, and so has Eric Bischoff and so many others, quote unquote, what the fuck is a 5-star match? And here's the reality of that. I've always viewed it as it's one guy's opinion. Sort of like once upon a time, I grew up on Siskel and Ebert. You found out, did this movie have 2 thumbs up or 1 thumbs up or thumbs in the middle, whatever. But Siskel and Ebert made that a big deal when I was a kid. And so when a movie got 2 thumbs up, you're like, oh, well, let's go check this out. But Jeff, you've been one of the guys having matches rated by Dave Meltzer. You've also promoted shows that were rated by Dave Meltzer, but I don't think you ever got a check from him. I don't think his opinion ever paid a utility bill for your family or household. So you had to be pretty laser focused on business as a promoter. But as one of the talent, I am curious, wear your wrestler hat for a minute. How important, or is it important at all, to have a quote unquote 5-star match?
I'm still kind of dumbfounded at how much traction that reply that whoever runs it,
Kevin runs his social,
has got to love Kevin Nash, because who runs Wrestling Banana or whatever, whoever. Anyway, I say all that to say, I've had an epiphany. Old Double J's had an epiphany. Dave Meltzer is a troll. He's trolling the internet. I'm kidding, Conrad, but him giving Ospreay 4 matches in a month, 5 stars. He knows he's getting in the headlines with that. There's no doubt in my mind. It also goes to clearly point out that yes, it's opinion. I'll agree with you. But what is his metric? Like, what is the metric Dave is using?
It's how well he liked it.
Oh, for sure. But is it X amount of false finishes, X amount of high spots? It's his opinion, right?
Yes.
And the discussion of how many people were there, or in Kevin's tweet, how much merchandise was sold and all that. It's like we're not even discussing apple and oranges. Again, I think now a match is viewed as a performance, if you will, and that's the evolution of the business. Love it or hate it.
You said business though, and I think that's what Kevin. I haven't asked Kevin about this. Okay. I guess in an interest of total transparency, when I saw that response, I sent it to you on Twitter DM, because I wanted you to see that when everyone was having a conversation on performance, Kevin Nash brought the conversation back to business.
Yeah.
Because it is the wrestling business.
Yes, it sure is.
And Jay-Z, the rapper, not the cop who runs around with Bojangles in North Carolina, he has a famous lyric: would you rather be overpaid or underrated? And I think we know which one Kevin Nash would pick. Kevin Nash would pick overpaid every time.
Sure.
And there's nothing wrong with that, but it is a different approach. I think there is a pride of performance that a wrestler probably has. Most wrestlers. I'm not a wrestler. What the fuck do I know? But I'm just saying, I think the Jeff Jarrett I know, when he goes through the curtain, he probably wants to make sure everybody got their money's worth. He wants to go steal the show. He wants to have a great performance. He wants to excel. I only say that because I know how much you prep for our podcasts. And even before we do panels where we're going to say the same thing we've said 4 other years in a row, you want to prep. And that's a pride of performance that you have. And so I'm curious from your perspective as a wrestler, are you able to separate the two? I mean, because the merch sale metric is a metric of who's over, right? So it's a matter of, do you want to be over with the ticket buyer, with the person who spends money at the turnstile and buys the pay-per-view and buys the t-shirt and buys the action figure, or do you want to be over with the critic?
And I'll say this, and you may need to help me clean this up, but I say it out of sincerity. I often viewed through my entire career, if I get a high star rating, and I say a high star 2, 3, 4, I'll almost look at that as a negative, because then it's viewed much more as a performance as opposed to capturing emotion. The Ric Flair last match was probably a -7 stars.
He didn't rate it out of respect for Jeff, I'm sure.
Out of respect for Rick. He didn't rate it, which applause. I'm happy. It's almost the same when you're getting heat and you hear the chant, "This is awesome." That immediately tells me that the fan base, the audience live, is viewing this as, oh, wow, aren't those boys having fun out there? This is an awesome little display of get-togetherness, or what a little run of high spots they had. That type of that's the look that, and I'm not spitting in the wind and I'm not fighting evolution. I understand all that, but you go back and watch in Hogan Rock. This is awesome chants were around during that time. They weren't chanting that. The emotion just wraps you up. When Aaron Rodgers throws a bomb and a guy goes in for a touchdown, the people in the audience don't saying, "This is awesome," or whatever it is, "You still got it." No, they're not chanting that. That's kind of a play along, sing along type deal. That's like an in-ring. When you're really performing, I believe, at a high level, the emotion takes over. When Cody Rhodes came through the stage at Mania and that emotion, I mean, it's like you can't manufacture real emotion. So this is awesome, and 5 stars and all those kind of things that go with it. I'm not fighting it. I'm not downplaying it, but I do not think it equates to money. I just don't. I don't think it equates to dollars. I haven't ever seen proof that 5-star, whether it's Meltzer or Keller or anybody else, if you're rating a match, I don't have any correlation into making money.
Well, I mean, I don't think that's even the issue. I think that's fair. I think it just becomes a personal point of pride. I mean,
sure.
Like, what are you trying? So like we were together at Podcast Movement, and we had a wonderful lady, I think she's in the first or second row, ask a great question about, she wanted to start a podcast for folks who were suffering from heart failure. But she asked, should she expand that footprint beyond just talking about heart failure as a topic or subjects? And should she just talk about heart disease and any other heart ailment? And my answer to her question was, in fact, another question, which is less than ideal. But I asked, hey, what's the intention? Why are we doing a podcast? Are we doing it because we want to have as big of a podcast as we can and make as much money as we can and make it a for-profit business venture? Or is it just a passion project? And she said it was her passion. And I said, just do heart failure. Do the thing you're most passionate about. And I do believe there are a certain amount of folks who get into wrestling who just really want to be a part of it. They just love wrestling. They don't care if on TV,
for sure,
or make a bunch of money,
for sure,
or retire. They love it. And I think that's fantastic. And I get solicited about, I want to start a wrestling podcast. Well, just do it. They're free. I mean, you can go, just go do it. I mean, that sounds silly, but put it on YouTube and go do it. It doesn't cost anything. Anybody can do it. It's a matter of, what are you trying to get out of it? And it's clear to me that Will Ospreay is trying to have the best quality matches in the world right now. And based on all the critics, he is. So kudos to him. But I don't think that was Kevin Nash's intent when he got in. I don't think Kevin Nash said, man, if I can that's just not a thing. Like, I think Kevin Nash got in the business to make as much money as he could and to have the best quality of life for him and his family as they could.
Purpose.
Yes.
Purpose. I could not agree more. Yes. What problem is the wrestling business going to solve for Kevin Nash? It was put money in his pockets. What problem is the wrestling industry going to solve for Will Ospreay? It is what he wants to achieve as the best in-ring performer, judged by Dave Meltzer.
Well, not by Dave Meltzer.
But Dave Meltzer's.
Yes, fulfillment. That's what we're looking for. What's going to make you feel fulfilled? Financial success or critical success? And I know Kevin Nash would rather have financial success. What would Jeff Jarrett rather have?
Financial.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, when you just said that, Uber driver the other day picked me up. So from my house to the airport's about 45 minutes, sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less. And we're chatting it up and, hey man, I got a demo here. I want you to hear another demo. And he's asking, I want your honest feedback. And I said, all right, let me hear the third song, because I've heard two. And after I heard them, I'm like, I want to hear, I sort of went through, not as good as you do, Conrad. What are you looking to get out of this? Do you want radio play? You want to make money? Or do you want to play music? Because he plays at a couple of spots around town. And he goes, well, radio. And we shared that common discussion that radio is different than it was. And it's not quite, the strategy just completely different. And it's payola and the streaming world, that's all changed. So anyway, we narrowed it back down to, he likes to play live music in Nashville with a crowd. It doesn't have to be 3,000, doesn't have to be 5,000. The place he plays at on, I think he said Wednesday and Saturday nights that he's got a standing gig. He said the most we can get in there is about 200 folks, but there's usually about 100. And I said, do you like it? He said, absolutely. I said, how long do you play? He said, they asked me for 3 and I'll stay for 5. I said, well then, buddy, song number 1 is your deal. It's a jingle, it's a sing along, and you're having all kind of fun. The others, you're trying to get on radio play, and it's just really, really tough. And he was mid-40s, he wasn't a young guy. So anyway, that kind of discussion had on music. So do you want critical acclaim? Do you want personal fulfillment, or do you want to go make money?
And again, I don't think there's a wrong answer. I
definitely don't think there is. Absolutely, there's not.
I appreciate Kevin Nash bringing it back to business, but I also appreciate that a guy like Will Ospreay, and by the way, I think this is a smart strategy. I don't know what Will Ospreay's plans and hopes and aspirations are, but I do know if you want to get attention from certain folks in power in wrestling here in America, you go have kick-ass matches in Japan, and we're all going to hear about it. And Will Ospreay's done that and done a fantastic job with it. So I hope that nobody took this as a takeaway from this as shitting on Ospreay or Nash, because I think both of them have checked their boxes in wrestling. Like, realistically, I don't know how much else there is for Will Ospreay to accomplish. It feels like he's checked all the boxes there are to check in New Japan. And if that's where he wants to spend the rest of his career, I mean, he kind of did most all of it already. At a very young age. And Kevin Nash, man, he was getting those big checks before a lot of folks. So he probably checked all of his boxes too.
So it's good to healthy discussion. Here's the thing that has always been a little bit of a head scratcher for me is either the injury or the potential for injury based off the style you work. And at 40 years of age, 50 years of age, just trying to give them a little guidance and look back and go, man, you are broken down. Was it worth it? I don't know. I mean, look, we could talk in circles on this, but I don't know. That's to me, sometimes I want to grab some guys and just say, hey man, it's your life, it's your career. But I've seen some guys that as they move around in their mid 40s, even not even 50s and 60s, was the ROI there in day-to-day life? I don't know.
I asked Mick Foley that, and he wasn't sure. And Mick Foley sacrificed more than most.
Oh, a lot more.
He worked the craziest, most violent, most brutal style. And even he had to contemplate that over on our podcast, Foley's Pod. But to your point, go ahead.
I really want that to sink in. Sometimes as the podcast has rolled on in this last year and a half, as far as different folks that are at different stages and listening on this business, the biggest box office attraction, in my opinion, in the history of the business with the hardcore style.
Mm-hmm.
Terry Funk was pre the big, you know, but Mick Foley in, and I hate to just put it in that, but you know where I'm going with it, in the hardcore style. New York Times bestseller, Hall of Famer, legendary, stage show. I mean, he is, Conrad, is it safe to say he's the biggest box office attraction in the hardcore style?
I don't think it's close.
Okay. So with that being said, if he told you he's not sure, just by the odds of it, I hope some folks think through if they're contemplating a very, very high risk move, period. I'm not going to say in front of 100 people. I'm not going to say
no, but listen,
doing it.
Let's just talk about that though. Because if this is really what we're talking about, who would ever play football? Knowing what we know about head trauma and CTE, why would you ever put the helmet on again? I put it on when I was 5 years old. I mean, I was raised hitting motherfuckers. Like that's what you did. And when you got a concussion, when you played football in Alabama,
Get back out there.
You got your bell rung, which meant you came out for one play and then you were back. Rub some dirt on it and go knock his goddamn dick in the dirt. That's Ray Holder to a 7-year-old. I mean, that's what it is. And we didn't know any better. And now we know better. But I'm saying they're still playing football this weekend at a high level. So I'm just saying all that to say, I don't know that I want to say, well, let's not do anything that's dangerous. I do believe.
I didn't say that. No.
I know, but I'm just saying, you and I have seen some pretty gruesome, horrific injuries in wrestling, where really and truly it didn't look like anything. Like the wreck that killed Dale Earnhardt didn't look all that bad. We've seen so many more spectacular crashes, and they walked away, and then Dale, not that. I'm not even a big race fan, but I was like, well, that's nothing compared to the Allisons or whatever. You know what I mean? And gone, because there's just that inherent risk there. I don't think anybody would have thought, like nobody would have ever said, well, boy, Big E works a dangerous style. You know what I mean? Like, and it just happened. And I think that risk is always there, but I do think, hey, there is a pride of performance that Will Ospreay likes, knowing, hey, I'm the best wrestler in the world. People want to be the best, and they also want to be the best paid. But I'm saying,
no, they want to be the best, and they're willing to sacrifice that. I hats off. I'm all for that. I guess I'm saying is that there's some bumps out there that take place. If you go back and look at Jeff Hardy's career, he's taken some crazy, but when you really look down to it, he was safe.
Yeah.
To me, he was safe. And I'm saying you can do crazy big stunts and bumps and still be safe. And then you can do average where you're not really thinking it through, and that piece of glass, whatever. We're probably getting in a rabbit hole, but I just think
we're all the way in the rabbit hole, but it's fine, because this is a conversation a lot of people are having right now. And I guess it all goes back to, what's the intent? What's the purpose? What's your goal?
Yeah.
If your goal is to be regarded by the critics as being the best wrestler in the world, take the Will Ospreay, Kenny Omega, AJ Styles route, because all of those guys are in the conversation every single time we open our mouth about, the best wrestlers in the world. And if you want to be the highest paid wrestler in the world, we'll take the Brock Lesnar, Roman Reigns route. And those are two totally different things. I don't know that Will Ospreay would be fulfilled if he was in Roman Reigns' spot. And I don't know that Roman Reigns would feel fulfilled if he was in Will Ospreay's spot. And
Well
neither
said.
guy's wrong. You know,
Well
it's
said.
that they're both doing their own. So I guess what I'm saying is, hey man, this life is what you make it. And when it comes to those type decisions, the one thing Jeff and I always agree on is we're going to be making some meat on a RecTech, baby. RecTech has changed our life. I have to admit, Jeff and I were both a couple of dumbasses because we were running around fidgeting with these messy charcoal grills that we would have to go preheat for an hour and make sure we had enough of that dirty ass hardwood lump charcoal. And then we'd have to clean out the ash tool. And every now and again, we'd have to just refurb it. And if we want to smoke something, well, we better stay up all night and sit by it with a cold beer and make sure it's all right. Cause we got to make sure that air flows just right. We were a couple of dumbasses who were introduced to the RecTech. They started just $399. They got grills for every lifestyle and every budget. They have a key focus on flavor, convenience, and versatility, and their factory direct pricing eliminates the middleman. Oh, by the way, all their grills shipped for free. But not only that, I have to admit, I had another wood pellet smoker before. It's not near the quality of this one. Side by side, there is no comparison. This is a much higher quality product. It's built to last a lifetime. I'm talking about their flagship model from RecTech, the RT700. It comes with a 40-pound pellet hopper. Let me explain what that means. You're going to dump 40 pounds of pellets in there, and you don't have to fool with it again for a long time. That's a lot of smoking. It's a lot of smoking space, too. You got 702 square inches of cooking space. Means you could feed a small army, and sometimes Jeff has to. He's got youngins every which way. The PID Wi-Fi controller, game changer. Now, my other wood pellet grill, they said they had this. They don't have it like RecTech. You could turn on your grill. You could turn off your grill. You can turn the heat up. You can turn the heat down. You can do it from your phone. But most importantly, you can dial in the temperature. Jeff and I, we were out there guessing before. If we wanted to check the temperature of our meat, we had to lift the grill. We had to stick a probe in. We had to see what we could see. Now, dude, I'm like farting in the couch and I'm looking at my phone. Oh, meat's done 2 degrees away. I never burn anything. Everything's cooked perfect every time. And it's because RecTech has it dialed in. Not only that, they've got your back with a 6-year bumper to bumper warranty. And when I say you can do everything on this grill, I mean it. You can bake. Yes, people are putting cakes on their RecTech. That's real. My wife made peanut butter cookies on the RecTech this past weekend. Not kidding around. You can also smoke stuff. You want to smoke a brisket, smoke a turkey, no problem. You want to sear something? Got it. You just want to grill some hamburgers? No problem. They tell me you can dehydrate. I haven't done that yet, but I've done everything else, and it was all with the push of a button. So get rid of that tasteless gas grill. You should be ashamed of yourself. Throw out the messy ass charcoal grill that your wife's intimidated by. Mine was. And forget that overhyped brand name grill. Join an elite wood pellet grilling family. They're focusing on flavor, convenience, and versatility. RecTech truly has set a new standard in grilling. I love mine. Jeff loves his. It's RecTeq.com. And use that code Jarrett5 to get 5% off everything site-wide, not just the grills. Yes, you get 5% off there, but they're awesome coolers, their rubs and sauces, the accessories, the merch. Everything's 5% off at RecTeq.com. That's RecTeq.com, and the promo code is Jarrett5. So, Jeff, let's, after we've just got really sidebarred here, let's talk about let's pick up where we left off.
I guess so. Get out of that rabbit hole, Conrad.
The lit up neon cowboy country singer who's tagging with the man with flames tattooed on his head to take on one of the largest individuals of all time and a clown. He then is going to appear on Superstars wrestling a garbage man. That's right. Duke the Dumpster Drosé. Let's class it up a little bit. Meltzer would say Jarrett got the pin with his feet on the ropes. Oscar came to ringside and told the ref Jarrett punched Oscar, which brought out Mabel. As Jarrett was running from Mabel, the ref had restarted the match and Jeff was counted out. So, Jeff, tell us about the time you wrestled the garbage man.
It got a little, Duke got a win over Double J on a count out. Again, you can just kind of, when you read through all that, all the different characters, you didn't get a TL Hopper. You didn't get anyway, character after character after character. That's 90.
The occupation gimmicks is what it's called.
Occupation era.
Yeah.
We just renamed it. It wasn't the new generation era. It was the occupation era. That was it. But gosh, and not to get off in the weeds, but let's just say Oscar was not familiar with the wrestling industry. And so he was a rapper, but have any, can I say that, Conrad? Like zero training. So when you're telling him that he has to come down and say that Double J the heel cheated to, I mean, we were walking him through things, Conrad. He just didn't have any concept of the industry at this point. He literally, as I said, threw down a rap in front of Vince McMahon. And, Vince could have been running a circus and he'd have got a job at the circus, or could have been running a baseball team and he'd have been the new mascot. Vince, fortunately, was running the wrestling industry. Because he had some charisma, but no context of wrestling. So challenging times, to say the least. And, there was a lot of talent there that wasn't seasoned when you look at the roster at that time. They just weren't. So, lots of fun of reindeer games during those times.
You think Duke the Dumpsters Rose would have wanted more 5-star matches or bigger paydays if you had to guess? I don't know Duke, but you know Duke a little bit. What would he have preferred?
I can assure you he'd want the payday.
Well, that's disappointing. I would have loved to have seen him tear it down.
Yeah, see, you're just gigging me. See how you are. There we go.
I just want you to get, the hate that I feel for you.
Go turn it on CBS. Just go turn it on CBS.
So this is the first time the United Center is going to be used after they're replacing the Chicago Stadium. We've touched on last week how big of a deal it is for you to be in the house that Michael Jordan built. The show draws 23,000 people. 19,500 of them were paying customers. So this is happening in a time where business is down. I mean, even Bruce agrees that 94-95, the business was just at an all-time WWF low. And here we are with 19,000 here. It feels, would this have been the biggest crowd you would have worked in front of at this point in your career?
It's got to be.
Yeah.
And looking at the research, it's got to be. In Japan, I think I wrestled Yokohama Arena, but I don't think it broke 20,000. I did Japan, Yokohama, wrestled Sano, and WWF is part of those. Anyway, that was early 90s. But, Puerto Rico wouldn't have had these houses. Dallas certainly didn't have, 23,000. That building in 94, the Garden's big, obviously the Forum back in those days and LA Sports Arena, but, a brand new building like the United Center, it was special. I mean, there's no two ways about it. Sweetness, Walter Payton, just the
Leslie Nielsen. I mean, lots of folks.
Bears run. I know we'll get into it, but yeah, it was a big event. Lots of sports entertainment around the entire product. But yeah, it was a big deal. It was a really big, obviously Chicago, the market, as we know, AEW's success in that market, WWE, Rosemont Rise. It's a big deal in so many ways.
Razor Ramon's going to defeat Diesel for the Intercontinental title. Shawn Michaels is in Diesel's corner. Walter Payton is in Razor Ramon's. That's a big deal. Tatanka's going to turn heel and join the $1 Million Corporation and turn on Lex Luger in the process. And for your match, believe it or not, it's not Jim Ross and Vince McMahon. It's Jerry the King Lawler, which has got to be a big deal for you personally. And then I was able to watch the match this morning. We're going to read the recaps from both the Observer and the Torch. But you could tell that you had some things that were sort of go-tos that you knew would work in this match. Here's what Wade Keller had to say. Oscar again tripped over his tongue as he showed an inability to articulate the methodical rap lyrics as Mabel entered the ring. Jarrett strutted after hitting Mabel. Mabel hit Jeff Jarrett and then mocked Jarrett's squat. The fans oohed and awed as Mabel elbow dropped Jarrett. Jarrett tried to knock Mabel off his feet, but couldn't do it. He dove off the top rope and Mabel caught him. Mabel hit Jarrett with a spinning wheel kick for a near fall. Crowd popped for that. The camera then showed Knuckleball Schwartz walking down the aisle with a picket sign. So just time out right here. All of a sudden, 2 weeks prior to this or so, Major League Baseball goes on strike. So Vince McMahon creates a character to piggyback that. And he has the old Brooklyn Brawler paint his face up like a baseball, put on what looks like a Yankee uniform, and walk down the aisle with a picket sign that says, "I'm on strike," right in the middle of your match, which I know is exactly what you hoped for. At 4.5 minutes, Jarrett went after Oscar, but Mabel caught Jarrett after a long delay and held him as Oscar slapped him. Mabel then charged Jarrett into the ring post. Mabel dove off the second rope and splatted on the mat when Jarrett moved. Mabel tossed Jarrett off and over the referee at the 2 count. And at the finish, in one of the only ways a quote unquote 500+ pound wrestler can lose, Mabel missed a sit splash and Jarrett quickly hooked his legs for a pin. Oscar and Mabel chased Jarrett back to the locker room. Just a time filler, nothing horrible, but certainly nothing good. 1 star. Only so much you can do here, but you hooking the big leg here for the pin. Hey, man, I wrestled in front of the biggest crowd ever on the second biggest show of the year for the company and got a win. Not a bad day at the office for old Double J.
And it was, again, for me, it was the feeling of, okay, Double J's rolling along. What's next? Razor was, he was over. Red Hot Sean, Kevin was getting, rolling along as well. But obviously Brett and Owen on this show coming off Mania at 90, a couple of months before. It was a big card, super successful. I was happy to get the win. I remember doing if you saw the match, Conrad, the 1-2 kick out, and I flew over the ref.
Yeah.
That got a really good live. I don't know how it came across on watching it back, but live, it got a hell of a pop.
Meltzer would have a similar review. By the way, it's interesting to see the differences here. The Torch said your match went 5:45. Meltzer said your match went 5:55. Not that it matters, but it is worth pointing out, there's objective and subjective. So like if we had an appraisal done on your house today, Jeff, we would take a look at the objective, how many bedrooms, how many baths, how many square feet, how big's your garage, how big is the lot, all that stuff. Then we would have subjective. What's it worth when we compare it to other houses? And that's where we would look at comparable sales. So there's 2 pieces, objective and subjective. Not only do these guys have different scores for the match, meaning in their opinion, Wade thought it was a 1-star match. Dave thought it was a 3/4 star match. They also didn't agree on how long the match was. That feels like we should be able to nail that one. But Meltzer says, I was surprised they had a guy that large do such a clean finish for someone so small.
Yeah.
Now, I get that. In theory, we're talking about David versus Goliath. I get it. But in this era, this new generation era, I wouldn't consider you, quote unquote, so small. Would you?
No, but I mean, Dave, again, it's his creative writing, if you will. I won't call it fiction. I'll call it creative writing. I mean, that's it. I also say that they were 10 seconds off. There might have been a typo in there, Conrad. They might have trying to be objective, but I think it could have been a typo. Let's not be so harsh.
Oh, I'm harsh. Listen to you.
5-star Dave. Just be nice.
Talk to me about putting this match together. Do you remember who the agent was?
Gosh, I don't. Those are the kind of things that, guys who write down their matches and the finishes of their matches and the time length and maybe who the producer was. I don't remember. My gut would tell me Pat probably had a say in it, but maybe Chief J Strongbow. Maybe.
Did you have a preference?
I like working with them all. Gorilla, sometimes trying to pull a finish out of him, but I like Rene Goulet, Tony Gurria, Chief J Strongbow, Jack Lanza, obviously Pat. Jack was really good. He had a good rapport. That they all had different shades of creativity.
Yeah.
But Jack had a great rapport with talent.
When you're putting together this match, is it something where you're calling it all in the ring, or in 94, are you starting to work through some of that in the back, especially with a guy who's
for this? And I'd probably say that with entrances and everything, we had 10, maybe. And we had the old knuckleballer coming down. So you had to time that. I'd say pretty much everything was laid out. I always would talk to Nelson in the ring to try to, again, the flow and the energy and whatever it may be. The GIF that keeps on giving, the strut spot and all that. We had done that multiple times on different levels. In Tennessee, he was the heel, I was the baby face, but we had done shades of this in the tags around the horn. We didn't try anything new. I'll say that for this match.
Talk to me a little bit about the rest of the card. In this era, Are you sticking around to see the main event and all the matches, or are you getting
Oh,
in
yeah.
the bag and okay?
No. Yeah. Watching it.
What'd you think of Brett and Owen's cage match? You obviously thought a lot of their WrestleMania match. Now they're back in the big blue cage. What'd you think of that one?
So the premise of at this time, WWE cage match of one guy walking out.
Yeah, the escape.
The escape was, you know,
Not what you were raised on. Yeah.
No, it's the exact opposite. The cage was used to keep anybody from, everybody knows this. Nobody can get in and nobody can get out. That's what you put them in there. The WWE cage match is you fight and you're actually trying to run from your opponent or get away from your opponent to win the match.
Mm-hmm.
So we had done many high spots in Tennessee that the heel tries to, the beginning of the match, ding, ding, try to run and get out of the cage and you pull them back in. So just the psychology was different, but Brett was obviously a seasoned pro and Owen as well. But in those cage matches, once, and look, the WWE audience, they understood the steps, that the psychology is we're going to lay this guy out. Then you have the ability to get out. So it's a different psychology, but I love the story of Brett and Owen. It had such a real authenticity. Look, Taker versus Taker that we'll get to in a minute had all kinds of showbiz to it. The Brett Owen was a storyline, which is an angle. It's a personal issue that everybody can relate to. Big brother, little brother. I love that kind of stuff. And their matches. I mean, they had matches in overseas. They had them around the horn. I mean, awesome. Great matches. Really, I think it'd be kind of cool if we podcast just like, Owen, what do you think about your run of cage matches with Brett? Like, I'd love to hear like his opinion on it, because I thought, as far as maybe, and I don't want to make light of this, but maybe in Japan or even in Calgary, Owen might have had those 4 or 5 star type performance matches. But as far as personal issues, if not the best of Owen's career, they have to rank right up there, top of it, because they beat the hell out of each other. It was gritty, high psychology level. It was at a high level. Their psychology in their matches was at a very, very high level. I love the finish that they did in the Garden at WrestleMania 10. So it was very, very good. I can't say enough good about it.
As you mentioned, the main event is Undertaker versus Underfaker. Of course, Mark Calloway winds up beating Brian Lee, and the WWF never mentioned it again. We would see Brian Lee as part of the Disciples of Apocalypse. He had a little cup of coffee with ECW as the Bulldozer, and famously a series of matches in SMW as well, Smoky Mountain. And as far as you're going to hook up and have some house show matches in late 94 with Mabel, and then you're going to work him seemingly every other night for the November European tour, where you hit Germany, Australia, and Switzerland. Any fun memories of working with Mabel in any of these matches over the years? Any spot that stick out, or travel moment, or anything like that?
To go back real quick on the Brian Lee Undertaker, that's another guy that, to kind of give full context, came up from Florida. He was original buddies with the Harris brothers. He came to Nashville. Actually, I don't think he ever got married, but he had a fiance. He had, so to see him get that opportunity, that was really cool. I mean, talk about a high profile match.
Yes.
Again, Mark in those days with that story, and with the Leslie Nielsen, which I mentioned last week, so entertaining, those vignettes, but it just sold tickets and pay-per-views, because you knew, as you know, again, that's the first time that I was, not the first time, but I was actually a part of the showbiz component of it. Is really cool. But Mabel on the international tour, we were both very happy. We both knew we could go out 8, 10, 12-minute match, make it entertaining, lots of struts, lots of him kicking my ass for the, middle part of the match. And then a short set of heat, did some couple of things. He would miss that big squish. I'd roll out of the way and grab one and get heat out of it and roll on. So we enjoyed our international tours together. We worked a lot. in the fall of '94.
Eventually, Mabel would turn heel, win the King of the Ring, and even main event next year's SummerSlam against Diesel. But of course, you had walked out of the company by that point. But were you surprised to see Mabel in that top spot against Kevin Nash 1 year later?
No. Remember, I said that I really thought, and play armchair quarterback, what if he would have come into the WWF as a monster heel and his first opponent would have been Brett? Different career trajectory, just a different, if he would have debuted on the scene as a monster heel that was mean and kick ass and maybe had a mouthpiece, maybe had a talker with him, not Oscar, no disrespect, but a heel mouthpiece, what would his career have looked like? You never know, but I definitely was not surprised to see him get that main event slot the following year.
When you returned later in the year, you both wound up disappearing from the company around the same time after the Rumble in '96. Did you keep in touch with him later on in life, or was this just a moment in time for you?
I would see him from time to time, but no, we didn't stay day to day. We didn't stay in touch day to day. I do think he made his home in Memphis. He came there as we said, a 22-year-old man, but I think he ended up staying and taking up residence, and Memphis became his home.
Talk to me a little bit about his reputation, right or wrong. A lot of people said that he was dangerous and that he would hurt guys. I don't think it ever happened intentionally or maliciously, but even Kevin Nash had an injury situation with him. Is it a function of he was reckless, he was careless, he would get gassed, or just, hey man, you can't be that big and not crack an egg every now and again?
To me, and we've touched on it, it's Conrad, I love doing this podcast because it gives me clarity, but too much too soon.
Yeah.
Mabel's first 90 days, in a lot of ways, branded him for his entire career.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a little reckless, which he wasn't. He was just green. He was a big comedy character, if you will, that it was very hard to overcome in the years to come. But hey, it's just kind of how life happens. But he was never reckless by the attitude of, I don't care. He's a 450, 500-pound man. It's just that's the reality of it.
By the way, I want to mention that IWTV.live is independent wrestling's premier streaming service for live events and video on demand of past events. If you saw Wheeler Yuta versus Daniel Garcia on AEW, check out IWTV.live, as they had an even better match for the IWTV title, and you can check out the likes of Eddie Kingston, Masato Tanaka, Jonathan Gresham, and so many more. For just $10 a month, IWTV.live offers 20 plus events streamed live each month from top independent wrestling. And just this past week, they had 10 live events. That's $1 an event, y'all. There's no better value in wrestling streaming today. Also, as an IWTV.live subscriber, you have immediate access to their extensive library of over 13,000 hours of video on demand content for more than 300 independent wrestling promotions from all over the world, like Beyond Wrestling, Prestige Wrestling, Absolute Intense Wrestling, and H2O. You can watch IWTV.live anytime, anywhere on Roku, Apple TV, and Amazon TV Fire Stick. And of course, you got the mobile apps for Apple and Android devices. There's no long-term contracts required. Just go to IWTV.live and subscribe today for just $10 a month. That's IWTV.live. Lots of questions. I don't think there's any way we'll get to all of them. Ted Bow wants to know, JJ actually really got a good match out of Mabel. I'm sick of the narrative that Mabel sucked. Probably just depends on who his dance partner was. Mabel versus JJ is a hidden gem. Jason would say, is there some kind of running joke behind this match? Everyone who was there shouts this match out when they're talking about the show. I think Punk in recent years even mentioned that he was at this show live and thought this match was a great match. LVL 32 says,
wait a minute. Say that again.
Punk liked it. People live really like this match. They give it their props. Listen, I think people had the key to life is managing expectations. You and I have talked about that a lot.
Okay.
And I think you had a lot of heat here, and I think a lot of people hated you here. So they just naturally thought, I hate him. This is going to suck. And then they see Mabel and they kind of roll their eyes and they're like, oh, this is going to suck. And then the match, to me, exceeds all those expectations. I turned it on this morning thinking this is going to fucking suck. It didn't. Now, I didn't turn it on thinking I was going to see, as you said, a Matt Classic. I turned it on thinking, oh, God, here we go.
I got you. All right, I'll sell that.
And when it was done, it was like, fuck, that was actually pretty good. And listen, I'll never forget, and boy, I'm probably oversharing here, but I was fortunate enough to be at the AEW show where Cody wrestled Shaquille O'Neal. And beforehand, you know, he texted me and said, hey, where are you at? And I said, oh, I'm wherever it was. They said, hey, come to the dressing room. So I came and found he had his own dressing room with Brandy. And he's getting ready, and we're just making casual conversation. And I said, man, you nervous, anxious, excited? He goes, it's going to go one of two ways. It's either going to be a giant train wreck or it won't be that bad. The idea being he had this pride of performance where he wants his matches to be so good, but because it's a celebrity mixed tag, blah, 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 he felt like he had to have realistic expectations. Like, man, if people just say, well, that wasn't that bad, then it's a win. Because at this point, Shaq's never wrestled.
Hell no.
About that. And like, he's having his first match on TV live in front of people. And there's a table spot.
And he's 7 feet tall.
And probably has a few injuries here or there. You can't play at a high level at that weight, at that height, that long, and not pick up a few bumps and bruises. And now we're not going to have a gym match. We're not going to tape it and edit it up. It's live.
Yeah.
And so much could go wrong that Cody just had the right expectation of, man, I'm just hoping for not that bad. And by the way, it was fucking awesome. Because I watched it thinking, man, Cody's not so sure about this. He just wants it to be not that bad. So when he comes back through, he just looks at me like, what'd you think? I said, not that bad.
Yeah.
That was the proper expectation. And I think this match on paper, everybody's like, but then holy shit, that was pretty good.
Let me give you a little inside baseball.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it back, but I'd like to. When Men on a Mission's music hit, did the people come alive? I'm banking they did.
A little bit.
I say all that to say music can create emotion.
Yes.
Before you ever see anybody out there. And if there's a good beat and a good vibe and something that grabs you emotionally, it helps things. I didn't say it doesn't cover up things, but it definitely helps things. And Oscar brought energy. Now, he didn't bring any energy to the match, but there's a presentation is huge to a live audience.
Well, and listen, that's what I wanted to say earlier.
Obvious, obviously.
Terry Funk had a line that he told Dave Meltzer that Dave Meltzer writes about sometimes, where he says, you wrestle for the crowd that's there. So if you're going to judge a match based on, is it this stars or that stars, you can't watch it on tape 10 years later and give it an assessment. You have to be in the building with those people, which is something you and I talked about not too long ago. We talked about Ric Flair's last match.
I got a story on that.
Because if you take a look at the feedback you see online from people who watched it on TV or fight or what have you, they thought it was an abomination and the worst thing ever. And oh my God, I can't believe this is real and this is horrible and yada, yada. I didn't hear none of that live. And from everyone I've talked to who was there live, they still are texting and emailing and DMing me how amazing it was. And I think that Terry Funk rule of thumb of you wrestle for the folks who were in the building that night in that specific time and place. And on that specific time and place, you and Mabel exceeded expectations. What was your story?
Leaving church a couple of weeks ago, Conrad, and a guy walked up to me and he said, "Hey man, come here, Jeff." He says, "Man, I was impressed with your energy." And he's kind of giggling all this. And I said, "Did you watch it?" He said, "No, I was there. I took my son." And he goes into it. And he said, "My brother, who's 8, 9 years older, blah, 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 blah." He said, "He's the one who got me into it. He didn't get to go, but I told him how good it was and blah, blah, blah." I mean, he was just really into it. The son was into it and they loved it. And my son was like, "I think this is the best event I've ever been to live." And he went to AAA and this and that. And he says, expectations, we were worried about Rick. They follow everything, all this. And like, you know, you and Jay, he was just super complimentary to all of it. And so he tells his brother, and his brother watches it and goes, "Oh, that's pretty good." And he's like, "I was let down that he didn't think it was the greatest thing in the world. And he's the one that got me into the Nature Boy, and he's the one that got me into TBS. And they're old school. You know, the son is 31 or 32. So there's a father-son deal. Anyway, you hit the point. They were there live, and the son's 31, 32. He thinks it's the best live show he's ever been to. And the guy, he's 60s, he's got to be late 60s. He watched it and is the original wrestling fan. And he's like, it's all right.
You wrestle for those who were there that night, and
Right.
those who were there that night really dug it.
Yep.
Liam Evans wants to know, and this is some of that same narrative we were talking about earlier. How snug was Mabel in the ring?
So, boy, you want to talk about inside baseball or story behind the story. So I use the word snug as somebody who's works tight, that not a lot of daylight, that no potatoes, all this. So the question was, how snug was Mabel? He was light as a feather, sometimes too light. But when you're dealing with 450 pounds, his that could turn on a dime where he potatoed the hell out of you and didn't mean to. I mean, big time, like hurt you, kind of throwing the weight around. He squished me a couple of times, or splashed me. I always call it squish me in the corner a few times, where there was not a breath left in me, where I had to say, Mabe, give me a second. And you just kind of gather your thoughts.
Let's do another one here. Michael Cohen wants to know, what was the feeling like backstage with the talent regarding the whole Undertaker versus Underfaker angle? Did talent like it, or think it was super lame and not going to draw?
No, my best recollection, Brian Lee was well liked backstage. Look, he had his demons, and Brian was cocky and arrogant, and most of the time in a good way. Now, he's rubbed a lot of folks the wrong way through the years. But for the most part, and I'll say this, through the years, and look, in 1994, nobody could have dreamed that Mark would have had the career that he had. I mean,
of course
he
not.
worked with anybody and everybody at the highest level for many years. There is no more Cal Ripkens. There is no more Undertakers. It's just that simple. But the evolution of Mark's career, from Hogan and Papa Shango and, just however you want to say it, when they did this story and Paul Bearer and Leslie Nielsen getting involved, it was a really, really, a big deal. We want to talk about those international tours. I mean, Mark's over, and look, when Brett's music would hit internationally, it'd be a great pop. But there was nothing quite like the gong.
Mm-hmm.
And when you had the opposing, the Underfaker, but we weren't calling him that, it was very intriguing on, okay, where are they going with this story? Not so much where are they going with this match. Mark is going to have his good to great match, but where are they going with the story? And to me, that's a lot of the magic of Mark's box office appeal. You knew you were going to get a good to great match, but where are they going with the story? And that's what we all buy, the story.
Next week, we're going to be back taking a look at TNA 15 years ago. It's No Surrender 2007. We've got Abyss taking on Kurt Angle for the TNA title. Christian Cage facing off against Samoa Joe. Black Reign, a.k.a. Dustin Rhodes, in there against Chris Harris. Kurt Angle defending the X Division title against Jeff's former tag team partner, Jay Lethal. Plus, Kurt Angle will tag with Sting to defend the tag team titles against Pac-Man Jones, the NFL football player, and Ron Killings. Plus, we'll have all of the congressional investigations into pro wrestling after the Chris Benoit murders. Unfortunately, Brian Adams passes away. The final negotiations to get 2 hours on Spike. Lots of fun stuff. I think next week we might set a recording record. We went 2 hours on one match with Mabel. I can't wait to see what we do next week.
Conrad, get ready. You know why? We're going to make Chris Park really mad next week.
Well, I love that.
He's going to be fighting mad, because I'm going to tell a story on him that, no, I'm kidding. But,
I am. I remember one time that silly bastard said Joe Burrow was the next Joe Montana. Come on, man.
Mr. Park, he's just a big bunch of Were those vignettes the best? They're still played in my house. Hey, do you know what today is also, Conrad? It's game day in the Jarrett household.
Oh, that's right. Cody going to be wearing it out up there in Hendersonville. And
yes,
here in a couple of days, man, you and I are going to make our way and descend on down. I can't believe this is real. Chicago, we're coming for you, baby. Moneyformongo.com. It's a podcast super show. Check it out on Fight. It's this Saturday. Y'all, it's free.
In the ring.
Yeah, we'll be in the ring. There'll be all of us in a wrestling ring. But
you know what that means? I said to my wife, I said to your wife, I said to several folks, if I ever get Conrad Thompson in the ring, he's taking a guitar shot.
We'll see.
Check. How do you do that, Conrad?
Moneyformongo.com. Seriously, y'all. He needs our help. It's a great cause, and we're going to try to entertain you, try to make you laugh. And hey, if you're on the West Coast, go check out Jeff this Sunday at PAX West. We'll be back next week talking TNA from 15 years ago, and I will be here with my head intact because I ain't taking no guitar shot. See you next week right here on My World.
Peace, my friend.